Hi, I'm Nadine, and I have a question before I start. So, who of the few people who have been to the Republika, who did see Carsten Wildberger? None. Oh, okay. Okay. I would have guessed that he talked about AI because he always talked about AI. And also, this is an image of the from the BMDS. And my hot take for today is why many people talk about the digitalization of public administration and the use of AI. The reality on the ground looks more like this. I know it's a cliche, but it meant a lot of paperwork, software from the 80s. This is a real picture of a software we had to deal with. And missing APIs and broken links. So the public sector, of course, is not a startup. It carries decades of history, and much of its infrastructure is legacy infrastructure. It's fair. I've been experiencing this firsthand in the project I'm currently working on, and I want to share it with you. So it's going to get a little nerdy, but we'll get through it together. So what's the project about? Basically, we want to merge 3 websites into one single legal platform. Looks like this. Easy. These websites contain laws, administrative regulations. Who of you knows what this could be? Any guesses? So it's like laws for authorities. Okay. And court decisions. And we want to make all of this available as open data. Doesn't sound too complicated, right? No, easy. Easy, easy. So, but the real work happens underneath. So behind the interface. Because we're dealing with a lot of really old data coming from many different sources, and we have to transform it into a completely new format. And that's where things start to get interesting. For example, we have different data formats. So we take a closer look on the administrative regulations. This is our example for now. And there we have multiple organizations who produce the data. And each organization follows its own modeling approach. So for example, the first one uses an XML format. Easy. The second one also, but slightly different, because otherwise it would have been too easy. Then they also say, hey, we also use a JSON, because otherwise it would have been too easy. And it's like they are talking in 2 different languages in the same authority. So yeah. And so they are slightly different because there's no shared structural standard. And for example, when I, as a designer, I want to provide user-friendly URLs, then I go to my team and then I ask the designer, hey, do you have anything I could use, like a shortcut? And then he looks it up in all the different data and he says, no, they're all slightly different. Sorry for you. And the next thing is we have inconsistent structures. So now we take a closer look at the laws. Love the laws. So what we want to build is we want people to read laws with a clear structure. And we want the entire content to be included there in the correct order. So after section 1 comes section 2. Easy, right? Yeah. So far so good. Sometimes we also have subheadings in between. Easy. But in the data, it looks more like this. So we have like a collection of independent building blocks, and each section exists as its own container. And so, for example, you have section number 1, section number 2, section number 3 is isolated units. And the relationships between these units, this is not stored, or at least not clearly understandable stored. So even the ordering is not clearly defined yet. So we're like, hey, which element logically belongs together? What is the correct order? Where do sections or chapters begin and end? And this morning I found the Miro board from the time when we worked on this, and it looked like this when we talked to the stakeholders about it. And I don't fully understand it anymore, but I know that this part was kind of important. And I also love that it says this can have up to 9 layers because of the BGB, because the BGB is one of the biggest laws, and there are all the special cases. Which brings me to the next, my favorite example, because once we had managed to create a law in a structure, then we had this other problem. And this was historically evolved special cases and unwritten rules. And this is my absolute favorite example. I was so excited when we found it out, because this wasn't because of the BGB, but the Einführungsgesetz, so like the introductory act for the BGB, if you want to look it up. You're like, no way, I don't care about your stupid, which is fine. But then we ran into a special case. These are sections and they are articles. And in practice, it doesn't really matter, it's just both text. But so in this moment now, you can see you have the one twice. So our ordering structure or our ordering number doesn't work anymore. So we had section 1 and article 1 existing side by side. So which comes first, article or section 1? How did we solve it? All of these elements had a specific document number. And one of these, the one with the R, I'll show you later, this number contains a special digit at position number 10. So when this is a 9, then there's a different sorting logic. So then we know first comes the article and then comes the section. We've had a bit like this. So now you might ask, who's this crazy woman? Why does she have a microphone? And what does all of this have to do with design? So for me, what I really like about being a designer is that I get to work on so many different topics. I can work on taxes. I can work on participation processes. I can work on parental leave, whatever. So I can quickly learn about new areas and think my way into them. But I need to understand something before I can design it. But I think we always break down topics into their components and examine them from different perspectives, and then we reassemble them in new ways. And of course, when we put everything back together, there's always one screw left. So what we do is we take things apart, we understand them, and we make relationships visible. And then service design is always infrastructure work. So my project now is highly data heavy, but when we see the pattern across services as well. So when authorities don't exchange data, the user journey breaks. So for example, when authority A does not talk to authority B, the data does not flow across the system, and user experience friction and repetition. So for example, when I became a mother, I had to submit applications to 5 different authorities, and it could have been just one single process. And I think designers tend to ask many questions, and then they also get to the bigger box, because we want that the whole user experience works. And this is how we quickly get to the ever larger box. And this is a quote from an American-Finnish designer and architect, Alien Sarin, who described it as, always design a thing by considering it in the next larger context. A chair in a room in a house in an environment in a city plan. Okay, then the third thing. Design is always sense-making. So we talk to users, we talk to domain experts, we make implicit knowledge explicit, also for our stakeholders, because they also don't know about the 9 in the document number. Of course they don't. And we define transitions, we mediate conflicts, and we make processes understandable. So I think we don't primarily design interfaces, we always design understanding for the stakeholders and within the organization, but of course also for the end users. So working on infrastructure means working for end users. So in our project, we have 2 different kind of users. So the one who actually use the platform and who want to read the laws or court decisions, but we also have the users who actually deal with the data. So and last year we spoke to the users of our API and we wanted to know, hey, which data formats do you really need? How well does our documentation work? How's the API integrated into your system? But everybody wanted to talk about the structural problems they are facing right now. So all the data challenges we are currently facing are the exact same challenges the end users face as well. So they have to manually fetch the data from each individual source. They also need to recreate the same data structure, just as we do. But once the underlying structure is fixed centrally, the problem is solved, not only for us, but for everybody end user working with the data. And we asked them, and most of the use cases are AI use cases, And once the foundation exists, the system becomes understandable, and then it can become intelligent, and you can build all the AI stuff. So I also should say that we are hiring, and this is the only project that is very, very data heavy. I also had 2 colleagues, or 3 colleagues, who also did a talk here. You can watch it there. Okay, that's it. Thank you.